Okay, boys and girls, we've reached the conclusion to our story. I'm going to read the last three chapters today, and we'll find out how the story ends. Chapter 18. It was morning. No dogs, no cats, no Eleanor in bed. Sun fell across the yard outside. I could smell breakfast smells. In the kitchen, Gran and Grandfather were cooking breakfast. Eleanor sat with Lula on her lap. Neil, Grace, and Biddy were being fed snips of bacon and toast. "Where's Papa?" I asked. Gran put her finger to her lips and pointed to the bedroom. I walked down the hall to the door of the bedroom and saw Papa in bed, Bryn stretched out beside him. I smiled at them and backed out of the room and went to the kitchen. "You heard the news?" said Gran. "His name is Nicholas," said Eleanor. She looked at Grandfather. "I probably can't call him Weenie, can I?" "No," said Grandfather and Gran. "Neo, no. Biddy, no. Grace, definitely not." "Okay," said Eleanor. 8 pounds, said Papa. He looked tired. "About the size of this," said Gran, holding up a ham. "Dark hair, beautiful, like you were, William," said Papa. "What about me?" asked Eleanor in a whiny voice. Biddy, remember the whining fairy. "You were, of course, beautiful from the beginning, Eleanor," said Papa. "We can go visit Mama and Nicholas today," he added. "Well, not you, Bryn." Bryn, "Why not?" "Because you're a dog," said Papa. The minute he said it, he knew it was a mistake. Bryn was insulted. Grandfather laughed at the terrible look Bryn gave Papa, which was how we came to be driving to the hospital, Eleanor strapped into her car seat, shouting at bad drivers. 4 dogs sitting in the car with us. "Now," said Papa, talking to the dogs, "I can't sneak you in. You understand that, right?" Bryn, "Yes." Biddy, "You could sneak me in." Papa sighed and looked in the rearview mirror. Gran and Grandfather were following us in their car. When I turned to look at them, I could see their smiles. "They're laughing at us," said Papa. "They are," I said. Papa put the brakes on as the car pulled out in front of him. "Go to your house," shouted Eleanor. Biddy, "Read a book." Neo, "Watch a movie." Papa looked sideways at me, and we smiled all the way to the hospital. Mama looked the same. Nicholas was bundled up in a white blanket and lay in a little bed of his own. He was almost the size of Lula. He had stared at me with dark eyes. I took his hand and his fingers curled around mine right away. "He is not pretty," said Eleanor, making Mama laugh. "No, but you will think he's beautiful very soon." "Trust me," said Mama. "See," she said to me, "things were just the way they were before." "Except better," said Papa. "We have 4 dogs waiting outside to see you." "What?" Mama got out of bed and stood at the window, looking down in the parking lot. Gran and Grandfather stood there with Neo, Biddy, Bryn, and Grace. Mama opened the side window and waved to them. "If anyone saw me waving to dogs, they'd think I was nuts," said Mama. Picture of Nicholas. "What are you doing?" a nurse asked Mama. She had come into the room with medicine. "She's waving to our dog," said Eleanor. The nurse's name tag said Helen. She came over to the window and looked out. "Wasn't that just about the sweetest thing you ever saw?" she said, smiling. "I have 2 dogs at home, waiting for me to get off shift." Helen waved too. Gran and Grandfather waved back. And then Marvelous Murphy swept into the room, wearing a scarlet knitted hat and a peasant shirt with bangles that made metallic sounds. She brought wrapped packages and an armful of flowers. She wore at least 7 necklaces of different colors. Eleanor's eyes widened at the sight. "Wow," said Helen. "I'm going. I think, however," she looked at Papa, "your wife will need to rest soon." Papa smiled and nodded at her. Marvelous burst into tears when she saw Nicholas, which made all of us love her. Papa handed her his handkerchief, and Eleanor held her hand. Helen left, waggling her fingers at us and rolling her eyes the way Papa and Grace might do if she learned how. Soon Marvelous would leave. It would be peaceful and quiet. I could relax with the funny feeling in my stomach that something more would happen. Chapter 19. But it did happen. Something more exciting happened late on the day Mama and Nicholas came home from the hospital. The dogs were excited. They got to sniff and examine Nicholas in his little blue baby seat. Bryn, beautiful. Grace, I think he is very intelligent. Biddy, highly trainable. Neo, I like him. I smiled at this. Neo liked everyone, even Marvelous Murphy. Mama smiled too, not because she heard the dogs talk, but because she could see they liked Nicholas. Mama was happier than I had seen her for a long time. She kissed us all. She hugged the dogs. I'm glad to be home, she said. Home with Nicholas, who was the most perfect baby. Home with all my perfect children and our perfect dogs. And Lula, said Eleanor. And Lula, repeated Mama, the perfect cat. And your husband, said Papa, who has not been perfect. The smell of Gran's ham filled the house. Sun filled the house, too. Grandfather put together his famous rhubarb pie that he'd baked when the ham was out of the oven. We could hear him talking about it in the kitchen. Yes, it smells good, he said. Yes, it is beautiful, thank you, he said. Who are you talking to? Called Mama. There was a little silence. Myself, said Grandfather. I'm talking to myself. It's Aloud. All of us, except for Mama, knew he was talking to Biddy, who was always interested in pies and cakes and cookies, anything sweet, gooey, or that dripped. Nicholas didn't cry much, except when his diaper needed changing or he was hungry. Mostly he looked at all of us, whether or not he could focus on us. And once he smiled. Bryn, a smile! And he stared over at us over Papa's shoulder when Papa danced Nicholas around the room, singing the Muffin Man to him. Grace, singing, another thing dogs can't do. Biddy, there's always howling. Neo, maybe we could learn to howl in tune. We ate ham and biscuits and corn, the dogs sleeping under the dining room table. It was just before we were to eat Grandfather's rhubarb pie with the crisscross crust that the telephone call came. Hello, I said. Is Mrs. Watson there? It was a kind of familiar voice at the other end. I looked at Mama. She shook her head. She was tired. Could I take a message? Well, this is Julia from the animal shelter. I remembered this spiky-haired woman when we got the dogs. This is William, her son. I turned from the phone. Julia, the shelter woman, I said to Mama. Mama looked at Papa. All the dogs sat up. Papa got up and took the phone. This is Joe, Janie's husband. Could I help you with something? We watched Papa's face. It changed from interested to more interested. One time he looked at the dogs, then at Mama. They're all fine. They're terrific. Janie's just home from the hospital with a new baby, so why don't I come down? There was silence. A half hour, then, said Papa. He hung up the phone and looked at us. He went over to Mama and leaned down and whispered to her. We were all quiet, even the dogs, who watched very carefully. Suddenly, in the middle of Papa's whispering, Mama grinned. Papa stood up. Well now, there appears to be one lone dog at the animal shelter. He is a smallish brown dog who needs a home, and the woman, Julia, thought about us. She said he is very friendly and smart and loving, and, he shrugged. Go, said Mama, go now, and take Eleanor and William. She'll want them there. We'll eat the pie when you get home. I'll make coffee, Grandfather said. And I, said Gran, leaning down to pick up her knitting bag. We know what you'll be doing, said Grandfather. Neo walked over to Papa. No, said Papa, we have to do this without you, Neo. We'll be back soon. Joe, called Mama. Yes? Take a leash, said Mama. We put on our coats and boots and went out the door, getting into the car without talking. Papa backed out of the driveway. Well, what do you think? He asked after a minute. I think it's a good thing, I said. Me too, said Eleanor in her car seat. And we all know how Mama feels, I added. Strange things happen, don't they? Papa said. Of course, this dog may not be for us, you know. You'll know when you meet him, I said. Maybe, said Papa. We reached the shelter driveway and drove up to the front door. Julia came to meet us. Hello, kids, she said. She shook hands with Papa. And congratulations on your new baby. Nicholas, said Eleanor. Nicholas is a good name, said Julia. She took us into the same shelter room where we had first seen Grace, Bryn, Biddy, and Neo. Eleanor touched one cage. This is where Grace was, she said. A small brown dog sat up and looked at us when we got near. He had a rough coat and dark brown ears. He looked at Papa. He wagged his tail, a little slowly at first, then faster when Papa talked to him. Hello, boy, said Papa. How are you? All of a sudden my breath caught in my throat. Papa? What? I thought maybe I'd cry, but I didn't. Look at his name, there on the front of the cage. Papa looked, and then I thought he might cry. What is it? Asked Eleanor. What's his name? Scooter, said Papa softly, that Eleanor had to lean over close to her. Scooter. If you remember, that is the name that the dad said he would have named a dog if he had one when he was a kid. In the car driving home, Scooter sat next to Eleanor in the back seat. She reached out to him and he licked her hand. Here's a picture. Do you think we should have called Mama and asked her if this is all right? Asked Papa. She knows, I said. She told you to take a leash. Papa drove on, looking in the rearview mirror every so often to make sure Scooter was all right. I don't suppose you talk, Scooter, said Papa, making a joke. Scooter, I do. Papa was so surprised he nearly ran through a red light. Eleanor and I were not surprised. Chapter 20. We got home and drove in the driveway. Papa got Eleanor out of her car seat, and we put the leash on Scooter. Scooter walked up the front door and waited for Papa to open it, but Mama opened it first and stood there looking at us. Hello, said Mama cheerfully. Scooter, hello. Mama held onto the doorframe. She didn't say anything for a moment. Neil, Grace, Bryn, and Biddy walked up to stand behind her. This is Scooter, said Papa. Joe, said Mama, looking a bit frightened. Scooter talks. Papa laughed, and we all walked inside. The dogs all sniffing at Scooter, and Dog sniffed. He does, Janie, said Papa. He kissed Mama. They all talk. Mama turned and looked at all the dogs. You do? She asked. Bryn, yes. Neil, we do. Grace, we talk when we have something to say. Biddy, and sometimes when we don't. Lula talks too, said Eleanor. Lula, repeated Mama. She looked at the dogs. Why didn't I ever hear you? She asked, holding on to Papa's hand. Bryn, you were busy having a baby. Grace, you were busy listening to Nicholas. Mama smiled her great smile then. It was not just a smile. Mama was something more. A word I had once found in one of Papa's stories. Mama was joyful. It was late. Papa was dancing with Nicholas in the living room, singing him to sleep. Mama was sleeping next to Bryn, who took up much of the big bed. Eleanor slept with Lula. I looked up the stairs to the attic room on my way to bed. I could see a light on at the top. Papa's computer was still on. Slowly I walked up the stairs and sat down in Papa's chair. There was a poem on the computer. Eyes. All your dark eyes are the beacons, showing me who I am, who I love, where the magic is, and where I belong forever. At the end of the poem was a single sentence. Good night, William. I smiled and walked back down the stairs and into my room, where Neo and Biddy were already sleeping. I turned back the covers and got into bed. Scooter lay there, his head on my pillow. I scratched under his ear. Move over a bit, Scooter, I said softly. Scooter, you betcha. The end.